live show is brought to you by Garden Express and Yates.
Garden Express are Australia's leading mail ordering service, offering a wide range of quality gardening products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show, you jump online and visit their website.
From indoor plant care to garden weed control products, Yates is the secret to a thriving garden. Later in the show, the team at Yates will share their top gardening tips and tricks for you to try this weekend. And for more advice to make your garden bloom, head to yates.com.au.
Hello again and welcome to another episode of Garden Gurus Live, the perfect place for all you green thumbs out there to get your gardening questions answered directly by Garden Gurus. I'm Darren Sino, I'm filling in for Trevor today. I hope you will enjoy the information we've got to share. As per usual, we have another $50 voucher from Garden Express to our best question of the day, so our favourite question of the day. So make sure you get your questions in by commenting below and be in the running for that $50 voucher. Thanks to you who've already sent questions in, whether you've sent them by messenger or by email. It's fantastic to get them in early. And remember, if you put your location where you live in Australia, that will really help me in answering your questions and giving you that little bit more specific detail. Now, before we get into it today, we'd love you to do us a favour by tagging all your friends in the comments below and sharing the live right now so we can build up our audience. Having a quick look at the weather around Australia at the moment, looking out the window here in Perth, we're in for a bit of a cloudy day, but a maximum of 23, so beautiful gardening weather. Sydney's looking at rain and 26. Over in Melbourne, I hear you guys have got a storm on the way, so make sure you tie those trampolines down and stay safe with a maximum of about 23 degrees. Brisbane, it's going to rain a bit later in the day, 29. Adelaide, maximum about 20 with some possible showers. At Hobart, it's raining in Hobart as well, only 18 degrees. It's a bit cold for this time of the year for me. And 34 in Darwin, always nice and warm in Darwin. Next up, before we get into the questions, we're going to have a quick chat with Angie from Yates and find out what she's been getting up to in the garden or what she's got planned for the weekend. Hello, Angie. How are you today?
Hi, Darren. I'm good, thank you. Looking forward to a weekend of getting my fingers wonderfully dirty in the garden.
Yeah, it looks like perfect weather for it all around Australia. Just a little bit of rain around, but that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, so it's been raining at our place today and over the last couple of days. And so feeding everything, it's always a good opportunity to feed when there's been some moisture. But a couple of things I really need to do on my gardening to-do list is I want to check my plants, especially my citrus, for scale. So scale insects, there's lots of different types of scale, and there's hard and soft, and they come in different colours. But basically they're sap-sucking insects, and they latch on usually to the stem, sometimes the leaves of plants, particularly like citrus. Also, they love magnolias and camellias as well. But what they're doing is basically sucking the life out of your plants. And one of the telltale signs of scale, in addition to the plants looking a bit ordinary, is you might see ants running up and down the stems. So what the ants are after is many scale insects actually exude a sweet, sticky substance called honeydew, and the ants just love it. So if you see ants running up and down your plants, it's a sure sign that there's some sort of sap-sucking beastie that's up in amongst the leaves and the stems. So I'm going to give my citrus trees a really good spray with an oil-based spray. Something like pest oil is ideal. The oils work by contact action, basically smothering those scale insects. So it's really important to cover all the scale-infested stems and leaves. So sometimes that means getting up underneath leaves and going around the tree from different angles. So have a look at your plants that could be infested with scale. So everybody out there, take that cup of tea out in the morning. Actually, that's a really good time to do a bit of inspection of your garden with a nice steaming hot cup of tea. So look out for your scale insects. Another one that I'm going to do this weekend is look at my tomatoes. So what happens with tomatoes, particularly as the weather warms up, if moisture in the soil or potting mix isn't consistent, it can really exacerbate a problem called blossom end rot. And it's a really common question that we see. So blossom end rot in tomato fruit, you can also get it in capsicums as well, but the bottom end of the fruit goes black and sunken and it looks like it's rotting away. And blossom end rot is a physiological condition where the plant and the fruit can't absorb enough calcium. So there's two things that people can do. Is one, make sure that you are consistent with your moisture. So whether it's out in the garden or with pots, making sure the soil and the potting mix is consistently moist, but also making sure that your soil has got enough calcium, because it's calcium that contributes to strong plants and helps reduce the chance of blossom end rot. So you can add some Yates lime and dolomite granules into the soil, and that helps to boost the soil calcium levels, and you can do it in pots as well, just to make sure there's enough calcium. So enough calcium, make sure your watering is consistent, and that will really help to reduce the chance of blossom end rot. And the third thing I'm going to do this weekend is, the garden loves spring, but so do the weeds, unfortunately. And I know if I don't get on top of them, they will flower and set seed. So particularly around my veggie patch, I love controlling my weeds organically. So whether I pull them out by hand or I can use an eco slasher. So slasher is a weed killer that's approved for use in organic gardening. So if all your lovely listeners out there are organic gardeners, then slasher is a really good weed killer. It works really fast. It's based on natural ingredients, really burns down those leaves and helps to make gardening a lot easier. So scale and tomato care and weed control are going to be on my top 3 gardening hit list this weekend.
Sounds like a busy weekend, Angie.
Oh, always. I just love it. I just love it. And they're picking some asparagus and picking some lemons and maybe putting some new seedlings in. That is going to keep me wonderfully busy.
Fresh asparagus, and goes beautifully with the lemon juice as well. That sounds like you're going to have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy yourself. Make sure you get on top of those weeds, because if they get away from you, you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, they
we'll
do.
talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, everyone. Happy gardening.
Thanks so much for Angie there for all that great information. A lot to think about there. Scale is a big problem on the citrus at this time of the year. And as she said, you do see it on the magnolias and camellias as well. So if you have either of those plants, keep an eye out for it. Well, we might just jump into the questions now. We're going to start with Vicky Brewer having a bit. Oh, sorry, that's not a question. Taffa Meredith has all the herbs. She says that all the herbs are going fine. Just her sage has bugs just eating the sage leaves and wants to know what to do about it. Well, Taffa, that's an unusual problem. Normally, if you get bugs in one lot of herbs and you've got other ones close by growing in the same area, the bugs will get into all of them. So maybe try and identify the bugs. That would be the first step I would take. So go out there at night with a torch and have a look in the sage and see if you can see anything specific that's getting into there, that's targeting the sage. If you can't see anything at night and you can get out there during the day, have a look during the day as well. Maybe get some sticky traps from your local garden centre. Put those up around the sage and see if you can find what it is that is just targeting that sage and not your other plants. Insect pests will target plants that are less healthy than others. So if for any reason your sage is less healthy than your other herbs, that's just basically a big welcome sign to the bugs and grubs. So just check your things like your soil health around that sage. Make sure it's draining freely. Sage doesn't like to stay or get too wet. So just check that the soil's draining freely. Maybe apply a seaweed solution as well and a little bit of slow release fertilizer. Try and get that sage in as good a health as possible and see if that helps it to deter the pests from attacking the sage. Maybe spread the pain around a little bit more to some of the other herbs as well. But that's the first thing I do. Try and identify the pest. Make sure the sage is in good health and then see where you can go from there. Now, Charlene Jones has sent in a photo of her apricot tree, and she's got a little bit of fungus growing on the side of the apricot tree. Unfortunately, apricot trees are susceptible to a few different fungal diseases. The one that's showing there is indicating to me that plant isn't in great health. It's sort of struggling and it's potentially getting a bit of deadwood in the plant, and that's where those fungal bodies are taking hold and starting to grow. So again, have a look at the overall health of the tree. Have a look at the soil around the apricot tree. In the photo, I can sort of see a little bit of possibly green grass growing around the bottom at the trunk. If you do have grass growing up close to that apricot tree, strongly recommend removing a fair amount of that. I would go at least a metre away from the trunk. Add some compost around there, a little bit of slow release fertiliser and mulch. Once we get into the warm weather, then apply a good quality wetting agent. Ensure that water is really moving into the soil profile and get that apricot in as good health as possible. Once flowering's finished and it's starting to get into the warmer weather, I would consider, without having been able to have a look at the whole tree in its entirety, but you may want to consider removing the area that has those fungal bodies on there, just to get rid of that infection altogether. And hopefully the tree will recover and then move along really well from there. But remember, with your apricot trees too, don't prune them in winter if you can avoid it. They don't like being pruned in winter. They're susceptible to gummosis, which is another fungal disease they get, unfortunately. So leave your pruning on your apricot trees till after harvesting. Now, Christine Rankin has sent us in some photos of her vanilla bean orchard. She's hoping she's done the right thing. Well, I think you've done a great job there, Christine. Christine's in Perth, the same as me, and vanilla beans don't grow that well as a general rule in most of Perth. So to have a vanilla bean that's got that much growth on it and looking so healthy, I think Christine is doing everything right, because that's a very good job you've done there, Christine. Keep it up, and let me know if you do actually get some beans on it. It'd be really great to see some beans being produced on the vanilla bean orchards here in Perth. Well done to you. Now we're going to do the plant of the day now. So just let me reach over here. So a beautiful little plant. Now this is a ceanothus, and this one's called Pacific Wave. It's a very new variety, only been on the market probably a year or two at the most. It's a form of the ceanothus blue Pacific, which has been around literally for decades. What the great thing about ceanothus, it has blue flowers. Blue flowers, a bit of a holy grail for plant growers, plant collectors, and plant breeders in general. But you don't really see that many true blues. A lot of purples, a lot of mauves that try and call themselves blue, but there's not a lot of true blues. The ceanothus flowers are really blue, really strong blue colour. They flower en masse. So this little plant will be completely covered in flowers in the next few weeks. You won't be able to see a green leaf on it. And that's fairly typical of the ceanothus. And the beauty of this one that I really like, that really caught my eye, is rather than being an upright shrub like the blue Pacific is, this is a weeping shrub. So it has these cascading branches, so they'll go up and out and cascade down. So they'll look beautiful in a large pot, in a garden bed around a rockery, wherever you can really accentuate this beautiful weeping cascading foliage and enjoy those beautiful blue flowers in spring. Very easy plant to grow. As long as your soil is free draining, has a little bit of nutrients in there, so when you plant, a bit of well-matured compost, mix that into the sand, slow release fertiliser, mulch it in summer, apply a wetting agent a couple of times a year, and that's pretty much all you need to do to keep the plant healthy. Once it flowers, you may lightly run the hedge trimmer or the hedge clippers over it, just to keep that shape really neat and tidy and keep the plant really compact. Pretty much nothing in the way of pests or diseases, and will take full sun, prefers full sun. They do get a little bit leggy if you grow them in too much shade, but great garden plant, great potted plant, and that seasonal blue flowers are something you can really look forward to in your garden. And when it's not in flower, beautiful dark green foliage, lovely growth habit, just a generally great plant. So back to the questions now. There we go. Tony Slater sent me in some photos of his weeping cherry. It's got a bit of damage down the bottom of it, Tony. Someone's, I think, and as you've indicated, has maybe been a little bit too happy with the whippersnipper. Got a bit close there. Got a bit of a scar on the cherry. That scar is a little bit unsightly. It's not going to long-term really have an effect on that cherry. That trunk will continue to grow and get thicker, and that scar will get proportionately smaller to that trunk as it gets older. The thing I would be concerned about on that cherry tree more than that scar is just to the side of it there, you can see a bit of rootstock coming up. So the weeping cherries are grown for that beautiful weeping, flowering, cascading foliage that's grafted at the top of a stem of rootstock. So the stem is normally around 1.5 to 1.8 meters tall. Anything that's coming below the graft, and the graft will be at the very top of the weeping standard, anything that shoots from below there is just rootstock, and you don't want that growing. That will actually take goodness away from the top stock, from the part of the plant that you bought it for. So you need to remove that bit of rootstock. And as with the listener with the apricot tree, probably just try and remove a little bit of that grass that seems to be growing close to the trunk. Take that away, improve the soil with a bit of compost. It's the perfect time of the year to be doing this sort of work around cherry trees. Bit of compost, keep it well mulched, make sure the water's soaking into the soil, and I think that cherry will, keep doing what you want it to do for probably another 100+ years from now. Very long-lived trees, and other than that bit of physical damage, no reason to think that's not a very healthy and productive cherry tree. Christine's got back to us, says that vanilla bean had it for about 5 years, lots of growth and no flowers, so therefore no beans. Probably, Christine, the thing that with the vanilla bean orchid that they really need is humidity. So you really need to find a spot where it's really nice and humid, and hopefully you'll eventually get some beans on it, because it'd be pretty special, I reckon, to go out to your garden, harvest down your own fresh vanilla beans and use them in your cooking. And if you've ever had to go into the shops and buy vanilla beans, we all know how expensive they are. Moving on to Barbara Wagner's, had a lemonade tree for about 5 years or several years, hasn't had any fruit on it yet. Barbara, that's a bit unusual with lemonade trees. They tend to want a fruit almost straight away. I've found when I've grown them in the past, I've had to defruit them when they're young, because they'll produce a lot of fruit when the plants are way too small to be able to carry the crops of fruit they will produce. A couple of things I would look at is nutrition, making sure the plant's getting well fed. So it really needs to get all those trace elements to make sure the citrus has everything it needs to produce fruit and flower. Look at something like a liquid potash as well to try and encourage flowering. Make sure the tree's otherwise healthy. Make sure the soil's in good condition. If it's in a pot, make sure the pot's draining freely, and on the other hand, make sure it's also holding on to moisture over summer, and it's getting enough sun. So if it's all those things that are happening, you're getting ample sun, you're getting all the nutrients required, that lemonade tree should be fruiting definitely by now. Yes, I said you normally get fruit pretty much straight away. And the lemonade tree are very heavy fruiters, pretty much like the Eureka lemons. They will produce more fruit than you know what to do with. You'll be giving them away for right through the fruiting season. So just have a look at those couple of basic things: that soil condition, whether it's in a pot or in the ground, and nutrition. So some liquid potash, maybe some trace elements, or a rock mineral mix will get those trace elements into that lemonade tree, and hopefully you'll get some of that delicious fruit. I'm a big fan of lemonades. They're a delicious fruit. Donna Rowbottom has messaged in, said she lives in the tropics and wants to know what plants are best for hanging pots. I don't like the look of the Boston. Really, she does like the look of the Boston fern, but doesn't know if it's suitable, and any ideas for keeping water up for them. So if you're growing plants in hanging baskets or hanging pots, a lot of them are available on the market as self-watering pots. So you fill up a reservoir and the water simply wicks up to the plants. I think the Boston fern would do pretty well in the tropic area for you, as long as you kept it out of the full sun and kept it well misted and watered during the hottest part of the year. Otherwise, you can look at some really nice tropical foliage plants like caladiums. I think caladiums are stunning in hanging baskets and have that beautiful coloured foliage that's out and looking beautiful 12 months of the year. So caladiums would be something I would look at, and but otherwise, give your Boston ferns a go, see how they go. Maybe if they're not too good, try the caladiums and see how they work for you. They would definitely grow very well in the tropical areas, and they're a very attractive plant. Nicole Enders in Brisbane has a Hoya, an Indian Road Hoya, that's not looking very good. It's got definitely got a few issues in that Hoya there, Nicole. The foliage has been severely damaged. So there's a couple of possibilities there. So one, it could be physical damage. Snails and slugs will really go for Hoyas. They're a nice flesh, particularly that Indian Road, because it's a very fleshy leaf plant. The other thing it could be is a bit of burn. So Hoyas do like a little bit of shade in the hottest part of the day. So ensuring that plant's not hopping that full all-day scorching sun in the hottest part of the day, in the hottest part of the year, could be it. And the other possibility, without having a really good look at the foliage, is it could also be a scale insect. So if you can scratch the discoloration, that brownie mark off with your nails, that could be a scale insect. But my guess, my probably most likely scenario here is that is either snail or slug damage or sunburn. So have a look at that, maybe see what sort of orientation that Hoya is, particularly in those hot months. That's when the damage will be done. Lisa Garland has sent some photos in of a plant and flower. Wants to know what it's called. Well, Lisa, that little beauty is sometimes known as Queen Anne's Tears, and it's a Tillandsia. So it's one of the bright, wider bromeliad family. Very easy to grow plant. It was one of those sort of old-fashioned plants that tends to go a little bit in and out of fashion. Really easy to grow plant. Will grow very well in a hanging basket too, just as an aside, but can grow in the gardens. And it's one of those plants you can grow in your garden. As it clumps up and forms bigger clumps, you can lift the clumps, break them apart, split them up, and spread them throughout the garden or into other pots. Has nice dark green foliage. It's a nice looking plant most of the year, but when those flowers come out, it's a bit of an eye catch, a bit of a showstopper, and you do see it around a lot, and it's a very good plant. It is one also that you would need to watch snail and slugs with, because it's such a thick clumping plant, has that really dense foliage. It provides the perfect habitat for snail and slugs, so keep a bit of an eye out for that. But a Tillandsia, Queen Anne's Tears. Wanda Woolley in Melbourne has sent us some photos of her lime tree. It's having a few issues with the lime tree, not fruiting particularly well, dropping a lot of leaves, but not all of them. So just enough to make you think the plant's going to die, and then it seems to pop back again. It's in a pot, so she says she's getting plenty of water. That lime looks a bit like to me, it looks like a variety called sublime. Sublime can be a little bit finicky about the exact conditions it likes. So you need to make sure that potting mix is in really good condition. So really top quality premium potting mix. A citrus specific potting mix would be ideal. And I would, when you pot citrus into pots, whether it's a sublime or any other citrus, I'd strongly recommend a handful of rock minerals and mix that into the potting mix as well. Some liquid potash would be really good on that citrus. A good quality controlled release fertilizer, seeing it's in a pot. So Osmocote for citrus, Troforte for citrus, again, would be ideal. And just making sure that soil mix within the pot is staying at a consistent moisture level. So what the lime doesn't like is for it to be really wet and dry completely out and really wet. So trying to keep that potting mix at a consistent moisture level right throughout the year, and just checking the drainage as well. Because potted citrus don't like the potting mix to stay really wet for long periods of time. It needs to be free draining to keep that plant healthy. But other than that, it's really probably just nutrition, getting some extra trace elements into it, and some liquid potash to try and hold that fruit and strengthen the plant up so it'll hold onto the fruit. The sublimes also can sometimes take a few years before they start producing. So I'm not sure how old that tree is, but before they start producing good quality fruit and holding onto the crops really well. So persevere with it, and it should do fine for you. Now, coming up next, we're just going to show you a little clip on how to send in your photos. Photos are obviously really great because it makes it so much easier to physically see the photo and to diagnose the problem. So if you've got photos, send them in, and this is how you do it.
Gardening question you'd like us to answer and you need to send us a photo, we'll simply head to our Facebook page and click on message. Type out your question and click the camera icon to take a photo in the app. Or click the image option and select the image you want to send us. Be sure to allow Facebook access to your camera and camera roll. We check our messages regularly, so sit back and be sure to tune in to the Garden Gurus Facebook Live show every Friday, and you'll hear your answer.
There you go. And also, if you've got photos to send in, another way to do it is to send it directly to our wonderful producer, Holly. And she has her own email address. That's how good she is. Holly at guruproductions.tv. So that's Holly at guruproductions.tv, and she'll get the photos to myself or Trevor, whoever's sitting in the hot seat. So we're going to take a quick break from the questions now. Have a chat with Rowan from Garden Express. Rowan, how are you?
Hey Darren, how you going? Always nice to have a chat.
I'm really good, mate. Yeah, it's always good to catch up with you. Now, Rowan, we've got a question that came through from one of our listeners that I think will be just right in your ballpark. It's Cheryl Robin had some Easter lily bulbs that was dug up and gifted to her from her parents many years ago. Planted them in a couple of pots, and while they come up and send lots of leaves, they do so at the wrong time of the year, so they seem to be out of sync with the seasons. They're never up around April, but they're up now. They, of course, don't flower, and all the bulbs keep increasing underground all the time. She's been tempted to throw them out, but they remind her of her parents and a family home, so they've got that sentimental value. Is there something she could do to reset these lilies, get them back on the right timetable, and actually flower around Easter time like they're supposed to?
Now Easter lilies are a funny one, mate. When I think Easter lilies, there's a couple of different lilies that come to mind. Things like Lilium longiflorum, which in our part of the country or in our part of the world, even Southern Hemisphere, it's probably even known as a Christmas lily more than an Easter lily, but Northern Hemisphere Easter lilies is what it's referred to as. I don't think it's that one. That one's a fairly easy one to grow. Most liliums will flower 100 days after planting or somewhere around there. So I don't think it's that one. But the other one that comes to mind is the belladonna lily, which is also known as the Easter lily in many parts of the world, and should be flowering, in the autumn in our areas. That one, there's a couple of things that may be wrong, although it really likes to be grown in a clump, and it will clump as per the listener said. It doesn't like to be too deep, and if it's planted too deep, it won't throw a flower. It will concentrate on its foliage, but it won't throw a flower. With belladonnas, they're an amaryllis, so very similar to hippeastrums that we've been talking about of late. So the flower will always come up first. So the fact that she's getting a whole lot of foliage by the sound of it makes me feel like maybe she's planted them a little bit deep. These guys should have, like most amaryllis, they should have their bulb tips above the soil level, not underneath. And that can definitely stop a flower from spiking. Other thing is, if you fertilize and water too much in its growing period, it will concentrate its energy on its foliage and probably not throw a flower as well.
Those couple of things, yeah. When you say that, it makes perfect sense to me. I've got some of the amaryllis in my garden at home, and the top of the bulbs are all sitting proud of the soil, and they flower like absolutely mad. So today we believe we're talking about pelargoniums.
Yeah, so this year, this week on the Gurus, we're talking about pelargoniums. So on the TV, we're talking about pelargoniums, and in particular, our plug packs. So these are advanced plug packs, so a much smaller plant, but a much healthier, less root bound. You don't get your root circling and stuff. So a much healthier, younger plant, much easier for us to ship around the country. But pelargoniums, maybe known as geraniums, very the same thing. We've got 4 collections available. Each have 3 plants in them. There's a saving of a little over 20% this week on all of those 4 collections. They're only $22.90 this week on the Garden Gurus, regularly $29.70 thereabouts. Also available individually, but obviously you're making that saving if you buy it as a collection. As I said, there's 4 different collections available. A Solstice one, which is a really beautiful, relatively new variety, very bicolour. So 3 colours in that one. We've also got Great Balls of Fire, the Santana collection, and just a general pelargonium collection. So yeah, really nice ones for spring. I don't know if you can hear that through the microphone, but we've just got a downpour of rain, so it's really coming down at the moment.
Well, we had our rain on, I think it was Wednesday night. We had about 15 mil of rain in about an hour. It's pretty
well, it could be that for sure.
Yeah. So the pelargoniums, that most gardeners are pretty familiar with them. I think majority of gardeners call them geraniums because they have those geranium type flowers. But they such great garden plants. They flower for long periods of time. They're really easy to grow. They don't seem to need a lot of TLC to keep them looking good.
Yeah, exactly right. Nice, versatile plant. And these ones being advanced plugs, they're gonna come to you ready to go straight in the ground and grow on really nicely. Possibly even get flowers in the first season.
Perfect. Well, Ron, thank you so much. Always great to catch up with you and hear about what you guys have got to offer our listeners. As usual, a great offer and some great plants. Can't wait to see what you've got in store for us next week. The link for this week's deal has been put into the comments for all our listeners. And now we're going to jump back to the questions. So thank you very much, Ron.
Good to catch up. Catch you next week.
Yeah, for sure. So back to the questions. Now, Rhonda Churchill in Hobart. What plants can I put with man's ferns, low growing so it doesn't spread? Now, Rhonda, I don't know what a man's fern is, so I'm going to have to put my hand up there and say I don't know what it is, but I'm going to assume it's a fern that's growing in a cool, shady area, and you're looking for maybe a ground cover that will grow well with that fern. Now, one thing I see in ferneries in gardens around Perth a lot, in those cool, shady areas, is violets. So you can get your English violets, and they will do very well in the same areas. Will give you a nice ground cover. They're very easy to control, so they're not going to get out of hand very quickly at all. Nice dark green leaves, but it's those beautiful flowers and the range of colours in the violets. You can get the traditional dark purple one, that really deep bluey purple one, but you can also get them in whites and pinks. Flower through the spring and summer months, and a lovely perfume. If you're keen, you can get in there and cut those violets and make little posies out of them, bring them into the house and bring that violet perfume into the house as well. So maybe around the ferns, the violets might be something you could look at, and they will do very well in similar conditions. So we're on to Carol in Campbelltown now, southwest of Sydney. Has a Morea hedge. It has a bald spot in it, which is getting worse fast. So has got a bit of a bald spot there, Carol, a little hole in the hedge, which is not what you want with your Morea hedges. Moreas are growing as hedges because you normally get nice and dense and thick and hiding walls or neighbours, whatever they've been planted for. Now, the main thing I think you'd need to do with that Morea hedge is I can see it's been mulched in gravel. I try and get under the Morea itself, pull a lot of that gravel back, because sometimes the gravel can get a bit hot, and also it's not really conducive to good soil life. It can tend to drive some of the soil microbes and that soil biota deeper into the soil and away from the root system of the plant. So maybe pull that gravel back away from the Morea hedge, clear the root system. I would give it a drench with a good fish emulsion or a fish hydroslate would be even better. Soak the soil with that, a little bit of compost, and then an organic mulch. Nice chunky, coarse particle size organic mulch onto that Morea hedge. And then you can give it a spray with a liquid fertiliser, foliar feed as well. Being in Sydney, New South Wales, Moreas do extremely well. So as the weather warms up in spring, you should see that growing very quickly again, and that ball patch should fill out very quickly. But I would just pull the gravel away, bit of fish hydroslate onto the soil, bit of compost, organic mulch, and I think that will recover very quickly for you. Melissa Peterson in Mount Barker in South Australia, also Mount Barker in WA, wants to know if you can grow palms in cold areas with frost, and if so, which ones. Tried crocus palms and golden cane palms, and they got brown leaves, and they will do, if you're getting frost, which you do get in Mount Barker in South Australia, they will burn the leaves on pretty much most palms. Probably the ones you could try that would be the most frost resilient would be Phoenix palms. So different varieties of Phoenix palms. The Robellini is the smallest growing one. Some of the Canariensis type ones, they're bigger growing palms, but they're more frost resistant to things like golden cane palms. Golden cane palms are tropical palms. They love the warm weather. Even in some of the milder parts of Australia where we don't get frost, you do seem to get a bit of foliage damage on those palms in the winter months as well. So Phoenix palms will be my best bet for you, and see how they go. Should be readily available as well. Moving on to Claire Palmer in Stoneville in WA. Wants to advise what is the best pollinators for 20th century Nashi pear. So the Nashi pears, so I'm assuming Claire wants to know what variety of Nashi pear is a good pollinator. So there's a lot of different Nashi pears. So for 20th century, thinking one called Shonsu, that would probably be the best bet. But if you go to your local fruit tree seller, they'll have a full range of Nashi pears at the moment, because they would have all got their crops in over the winter months, and would have a wide range of them. So 20th century is also a pretty good pollinator. It's a pretty good universal pollinator for other Nashi pears. So if you just get another variety of Nashi pear, you're probably going to be pretty safe. But go down to your local fruit tree nursery, see what they've got available in the Nashi pears, and get another one that's a suitable pollinator. So they'll definitely have them at this time of year. There's plenty available. The other question you might be asking best pollinators is, what's the best insects to pollinate the Nashi pears? If you're looking for down that side of things, like most flowering plants, fruiting plants that require a pollinating insect to do some work for them, your honeybees are fantastic. But also don't discard it. The humble fly. Flies are good pollinators in most of our fruit trees as well. I find if you put a bit of chicken manure around these trees, you'll get a few flies around, and they'll do a bit of pollination for you as well, if you want to go down that path. But otherwise, attracting bees into your garden with plenty of bee-friendly plants will get your pollination work done as well. Suzanne has asked, any suggestions for renewing a patchy lawn? So pigeons have eaten all the lawn seed. Well, if you've got a patchy lawn, hopefully that means there are some parts of the lawn that are healthy, growing vigorously and looking good. What I have done sometimes to do that, fix that sort of job up, is the areas that are patchy, that are bare, get a 3-prong hoe, bit of compost, really open that soil up, blend a bit of compost into it. So you're trying to break up any crust that might be on the top of it, break up any compaction, and then using the tool that you would use to clear around your sprinkler. So you can buy either a handheld one or one on a taller stem that you can go around your sprinklers. It pushes into the grass, you turn it around, and it'll cut the grass around your sprinklers. You can use that to actually cut some plugs out of your good healthy soil section of grass. Cut those plugs out, and then you plant them into the bare patches, but after you've obviously improved the soil. And where you take the plugs out, get some free draining lawn sand, put that in to fill those holes up. Your healthy lawn will quickly recover and fill the holes where you've taken the plugs out of. And the plugs will, as long as you get the soil right and those areas are getting adequate water in the nice warm weather, they will establish, because they've got a good root system already, establish really quickly, and then start running very, very fast. It's a great way to patch your lawn and get some good healthy grass in your bare patches of lawn, and it's pretty easy to do. So give that a go, and I think you'll be able to get that lawn looking good, hopefully for Christmas. Margaret Campion in the Dandenongs wants to know, it has an old peony rose that has never flowered. Have many newer varieties that have flourished and flowered, and with the older one, it could just be a bit of a dud variety or a dud plant. So if you've got other peonies in the garden that are doing really, really well, that could just be an issue with that one particular plant. It might need some feeding as well, so you can get a good quality complete fertilizer, one that's rich in potash and all the micronutrients that peonies need, so all your trace elements. Give it a good feed, improve the soil, make sure the soil's in good health. Sometimes plants can look like they're getting enough water too, but when you get down to the soil level, do a little investigation around that soil, break the surface crust off and have a look at the soil below. You can find the water is not soaking in very well. So make sure in the summer months, the water that you apply to that peony rose is soaking in nice and deeply around that root run, keeping it really healthy, because once peonies are really healthy, they flower a lot better. Moving out to South Australia, Night Calf has 3 table grapes. 2 have been in for 4 years, 1 has been in for 2 years, never got a grape, and wants to know what she has to do to help the grapes grow, and they're seedless varieties. It's unusual you've had them in for that long and you haven't got any fruit off them yet. Normally grapes will fruit very well in the second year. So grapes like a deep, rich soil. So they're like in where I live in Perth, they grow best around the rivers and in the valleys where there's nice, deep, loamy soil. So that's where you'll see all the vineyards. So grapes need a nice, healthy, deep soil. If you've got a soil that's very sandy, you need to add compost, maybe a bit of clay. If the soil's a little bit alkaline, you may need to also remediate the soil to get rid of some of that alkalinity, to keep the pH down a little bit. Grapes also need full sun, so it's important that they're out in the full sun, and they need good watering during the summer months. They don't like to dry out between watering, so keep the moisture levels in that soil nice and consistent right through those months. Other than that, the other thing you could probably check as well is see if the grapes are flowering. So the grapes will have their first flush of flowers in early spring, but with the foliage come out, the flowers will come out. Make sure you don't have an issue with rats that are coming through, or birds even, and they're just taking those flowers off as soon as they come out, because that can produce the problem as well, where if you're getting the flowers but they're not getting a chance to turn into fruit, you just think they're not fruiting. The problem is you're losing your flowers before they get a chance to fruit. So there are a couple of things you can have a look at. Number one thing with any fruiting plant like grapes is making sure the soil's in good health and they're being well fed, well watered, and they're in nice open sunny areas, because they need plenty of sun to encourage flowering and fruiting. Marcia Blake in Harvey says, "Hey ya, garden guru team. What would be the best thing to give my choco vines to boost their growth? They've reached 60 centimeters and seem stunted. The soils have been mulched." Probably some liquid fertilizing, Marcia, at this time of the year on the choco vines. Normally, most people's problem they have with choco vines is they grow too vigorously and get out of control a little bit. So a bit of liquid fertilizer. You can also add a complete fruit tree fertilizer. Would work very well on the chocos as well. And they should take off with a bit of consistent warm weather, and away they go. And then you'll be spending half your weekends trying to cut them back and keep them under control. Teresa Clark has a Callistemon RSL, which is in full flowers, and the storms have split it and it's come down. Wants to replace it with I'm presuming another Callistemon that's not too wide and grows to about 2 meters high. Teresa, there is a lot of Callistemons on the market now. There's been a lot of breeding work done with Callistemons. You can almost buy a variety for any size, height and width you can name. One of the really nice, smaller growing ones is St. Mary MacKillop. It's been out for probably maybe 10 years now. Really good variety, very reliable, nice compact growth habit, so you don't tend to have the issue of them getting too open and leggy and then breaking in storms and windy weather. So that would be the one I would look at, would be St. Mary MacKillop. Should be very easily available as well. It's a very popular variety. Now, Barbara Golden in the Lockyer Valley wants to know if it's too late to put mesh over fig trees to keep the black beetles out. No, it shouldn't be. Probably with the beetles, they do also reside in the soil, so you may need to put some mesh or some netting down on the ground as well to prevent them from emerging out of the soil and then getting into your fig tree. We have a similar issue in Perth with figs with fruit fly. Same sort of thing. As soon as you see your fruit forming, you pretty much need to get the fruit fly netting over and across the ground as well, just in case you've got fruit fly larvae overwintering in the soil. So it wouldn't be too late, but I'll be doing it as soon as you can rather than putting it off for too much longer. Catalina in the Lakes entrance in Victoria has an orange tree. He's had it in for a few years. Lots of flowers, but no fruit. Fertilizes regularly. It's very close to an apple tree on one side and a lemon tree on the other side. Having the apple tree and the lemon tree close either side shouldn't be a problem. They do grow quite happily, quite close together. They do all have surface roots though, so their roots will be getting in and competing with each other. I would be giving that lemon tree a good feed with liquid or granular potash, getting that on there, because if you're getting lots of flowers and the flowers aren't holding, that could be an issue. It's just lacking a bit of potash to hold that flowers through to fruiting time. Keep the orange well mulched as well. Citrus do have quite shallow feeder roots, so they're right at the surface of the soil. If that orange tree happens to be getting exposed to some really strong sun during the time the flowers are coming out, that surface soil can dry out quite quickly, and that can just shock the orange tree into dropping a lot of those flowers. So just have a look at maybe mulching the orange tree and getting some liquid potash onto it. Make sure it's well fed with a well balanced and complete citrus fertilizer as well. Fingers crossed we'll see some beautiful oranges on that tree in the not too distant future. Samantha Sheffield in Maida Vale has bought 2 oriental, maybe ornamental plums. Wants to know how far to plant them apart and are the roots contained. So Samantha, it does depend a little bit on what variety of ornamental plums you have. So if you have one of the upright varieties, so like Fastigata or Crimson Spire, so they're very upright ornamental plums, you can plant them quite close together, even as little as 1.5 meters apart. If you've got one of the other ornamental plums, such as Prunus nigra, which is an absolutely beautiful ornamental tree, you'd plant them at least 3 meters apart because they're more of a spreading tree than an upright tree. But if you've got one of the really small growing ones, so Prunus albans comes to mind, that's a nice contained small growing Prunus ornamental plum. You can plant that probably about 2 meters apart. So it really depends on the variety. 1.5 meters apart is probably the absolute minimum for the upright varieties. The more traditional tree-shaped varieties, up to 3 meters apart would be better. For something like one of the smaller growing ones like Prunus albans, maybe 2 meters apart. So you want to have a little bit of space between them, and they would do very well like that. Also doesn't want to use snail pellets because he has 2 dogs. Wants to know how to control snails and slugs. There's a couple of ways you can do that. You can go out at night with a torch when the snails and slugs are active and physically pick them up and dispose of them. Or you can throw them into the chooks as well. If you have chooks loves eating snails and slugs. You can use traps, so the traditional old-fashioned beer traps, very effective, or you can buy snail and slug traps from your local garden centre. There are snail pellets on the market that are far, far safer around pets than the old-fashioned ones were a couple of decades ago, and they're the ones that are based on iron. So you get ones that are iron chelate based. So as they break down in the garden, they're actually going to add a little bit of iron into your soil, which is always welcome. And they're far safer around pets than other snail pellets. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well. Moving on to the next question now. We got a response actually from Nightcat. Wants to check with the grapes to see that says they have plenty of sun and have wine grapes next to them. They're 2-year-old, plenty of sun, but we'll give them some more compost and water and let them know how they go this year. Well, good luck with that. I hope you get plenty of fruit on those grapes because the fresh grapes straight out off your own vine are absolutely delicious. Jennifer Work wants to know, will camellias grow in pots? Jennifer, they absolutely will grow in pots, and they'll grow very well in pots. You need to use a good potty mix. Most of the premium potty mix producers will do a camellia azalea specific potty mix, and so that would be the one I'd use. If you're looking to buy camellias for pots, go to a camellia specialist because there are some varieties that are absolutely far better in pots than other varieties, and it generally comes down to growth habit. So there's some more compact growing ones that will do really, really well in pots, and you'll be able to keep them in the same size pot for many, many years. They do like good drainage though, so you don't want a pot that's going to stay too wet or too big for the plant straight away. Look at a terracotta pot. They do great in terracotta pots, and terracotta pots really complement the look of camellias as well, but they improve the drainage. They drain a little bit better than plastic pots. And as I said, get yourself a variety really suited for it. If it was me and you're looking for a soft pink, I'd look for a variety called Chocho Sand. It's a beauty in a pot. Really old-fashioned variety, but looks fantastic. Nicole Enders in Brisbane has sent some photos through of a really unhealthy-looking dahlia. Bought it a couple of weeks ago in flower. Follow the instructions, remove the spent flower heads, and now it looks just absolutely terrible. Nicole, I think that poor old dahlia may be on its way out. Dahlias do have a tuber under the ground, so if you can have a bit of a scratch around the surface there, follow the stems down into the soil a little bit and see if you can find the tuber and see what it's looking like. If it's gone all soft and squishy, that's an ex-dahlia. I may need to go on the compost here. If it's still a nice solid looking tuber, sort of what you expect your potatoes to be looking like when they're in good condition and sitting in the cupboard, just cut the rest of those stems off, let the potting mix dry out a little bit and put it out in the garden and wait for the warmer weather and see if the tuber re-strikes. Sometimes the things like the dahlias that we buy in garden centres are grown in pretty controlled conditions to really get the best look out of them. So when they go into the garden centres, they're looking absolutely perfect. And when we take them home and put them into our home garden, which are sometimes not as controlled conditions as what the greenhouses were, they can go backwards pretty quickly. But dahlias are fairly hardy, and that tuber, you have a pretty reasonable chance. If it hasn't rotted, you have a reasonable chance that will reshoot in the warmer months, and you'll get flowers further down the track. Moving on to Beachborough in WA, where Jeannie Napier has a Lady Williams apple tree that's starting to flower and wants to know if it's time to treat it with anything so you don't get fruit fly. Well, Jeannie, there's really nothing you treat the tree with for fruit fly. So it's flowering. As soon as you see the signs, those flowers finish and they're starting to form the little apples, you need to then move into fruit fly control mode. For a lot of people, that means netting. So putting a net over the entire tree to keep those little pesky fruit flies out, or you can bag the individual apples and bunches of apples with fruit fly protecting bags that just simply go around the bunches of the fruit. Personally, I think it's an easier thing to net and tie a tree. You can put things like splash baits and traps and stuff out that will get the numbers down a bit of the fruit flies, but in all honesty, the only effective way to really completely exclude fruit fly from getting into your fruit and ruining your crops is exclusion netting. So that's a net over the entire tree or nets around the fruit. And it's the only sort of almost 100% effective way. There's no sprays available on the market now that will really do the job as well as what the netting will. And it's heartbreaking if you have those that fruit forming on your tree and then you lose it all to fruit fly. It's absolutely heartbreaking. So get the netting out there and away you go. Margaret Campion of Belgrave says, "Good morning, Darren. Good to see you again." Thank you very much for that. Wants to know if you can move a 3-year-old maple tree at the moment, have planted in the wrong spot, or does she wait till autumn? Well, to be totally honest, Margaret, I think it's just a little bit too late. I would have moved, if you can, I wait till next winter. The best time to move maple trees is when they're dormant and completely bare of foliage. So I would leave that, if you can, to winter rather than trying to dig it up now. The thing with the maple trees right now is they've probably popped out some fresh foliage and they're getting new growth. They're putting out some nice healthy feeder roots into the soil, preparing themselves for a glorious spring and summer in their new home. And if you dig them up now, you can damage a lot of that fresh roots. The new foliage will sort of die back and be really susceptible to being damaged. So if you can wait till next winter, I would do that and wait till they're completely dormant, till all the leaves have dropped off them and they're completely dormant. About July, August is the perfect time to move those maples, and then you're pretty much in 100% successful territory. Jennifer Work, now back to Ellenbrook in WA. Has any hints on dealing with chili thrips? Had issues for the last 2 years. Jennifer, you and probably 90% of the rose growers in Perth. So there's a few products on the market you can try with chili thrip. Success Ultra alternated with something like neem oil. It's very successful, but you have to be spraying that quite regularly. You can also apply a systemic insecticide, something like Bug Killer, which is a systemic that gets taken up through the roots of the plant and goes into the plant. That can help control it. I've had people tell me having good success by simply going out into the garden during the middle of the day with a hose, with a spray nozzle, and spraying all their roses down and that literally sprays the chili thrip off the roses. They fall into the mulch and can't get back out into the plant. So that's also people have had success with that. So there's a few different options you can go there. Just keep in mind not to, if you're having issues with chili thrip, particularly on roses, is not to excessively feed them, because if more fertilizer you put on them, the more fresh, soft, vigorous growth you get, and the chili thrip loves that. Bernadette Lovett wants to know if it's too late to dig up and transplant frangipanis, even if the leaves are starting to appear. Well, frangipanis, as opposed to the maples, now is probably as good a time as any to dig up and transplant a frangipani, because they do like the warm weather. They don't like being transplanted in winter when it's cold and wet, because they don't recover from that transplant shock very quickly, and you can sometimes get a bit of rot in the foliage and stems. So I would definitely be quite comfortable transplanting that frangipani at this time of the year, improve the soil, keep it well watered now, particularly as we are moving into warmer weather. Don't let it dry out, and that frangipani will probably not even miss a beat. You won't even know it's been moved. It will just keep doing what it's doing. Theta in Logan in Queensland wants to know what the best fertilizer is for banana trees so they produce bigger fruit. Bananas are gross feeders. They need a lot of feeding. So a complete fruit tree fertilizer is the best way to go. So you want something that has the full suite of nutrients, all the trace elements, and don't be afraid to throw a bit of chicken manure, some dynamic lift on there, and that will really feed that banana up and keep it pretty healthy. Anne Westaway Smith has magnolias and wants to know, she has alkaline soil, wants to know if she can grow them in pots. Absolutely. And as I said with the camellias earlier, there are varieties that are smaller growing, more compact, and so they would be the best ones to grow in pots, but good quality potting mix, and they will do very, very well for you. Leah was thinking of getting a couple of sweet time crabapple trees. How tall do they grow and how close can she plant them to the fence line? Well, crabapples, most of the varieties get to about 3, 4, 5 meters tall, depending on pruning. And that's the same with the sweet time varieties. If you prune them, you can keep them a lot smaller. I wouldn't get them any closer than a metre from fence. If you can go to 1.5 metres, that would be even better. We have a couple of sick monsteras. Didn't get around to moving them off the patio in winter, and they're in a coastal area, so they're getting smashed with salt winds. I want to know if they can cut the stems right back. You certainly can cut the stems back on the monsteras. They will reshoot with some fresh growth really quickly. Liquid feed them straight after doing that, and then they will be more than happy to get out some fresh growth for you. That's all our questions for today. There was a lot today. A few more in the comments. We'll get to them first up next week, so thank you very much. For our competition draw, Vicky Brewer was our winner of the $50 Garden Express voucher. Well done, Vicky. Was that from last week? So Vicky, you actually won a previous one. You need to get in contact. Holly's having trouble getting in touch with you. So this week's lucky winner was Night Kath, who asked about the grapes. Congratulations, Night Kath. And to claim your prize, make sure you message us on Facebook so we don't have to chase you up the following week and get your voucher too really quickly. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed our show today. Thank you so much for all your questions. Sorry if I didn't get to yours. Trevor will get to them next week for sure. Thank you for your flexibility of the times over the last few weeks. Should be back to normal scheduling next week, but make sure you check out our Facebook page the night before just to be sure. We'll be back next week with another live show. Tune here on Facebook or on YouTube. You can watch it on either platform. Continue to send your questions and photos through via Messenger, or you can send them directly to our wonderful producer, Holly. That's holly@guruproductions.tv. And don't forget to include your location. It makes things so much easier. Remember, you can jump onto our website, catch up on our previous stories at the Garden Gurus at gardengurus.tv, or on our YouTube channel, thegardengurus.tv. And of course, tune in for another episode of the Garden Gurus tomorrow at 3:30 on 9 at all markets. Happy gardening, everyone, and I'll see you next time I'm in.